This is a Sphinx. Gaze upon its glory. Today on Underrated Commanders, I'm going to show you just how powerful these nightmare fuel abominations are.
Holy Jesus! What is that?
In the ancient Greek anime arc, the Sphinx was a brutal riddle master. Answer her riddle correctly, and you get to become the king of Thebes. Get the answer wrong, and she tears you limb from limb and eats your flesh. Friend of the Commander Dojo, Oedipus is one of the few mortals to ever guess a Sphinx's riddle correctly, and his prize? A kingship, but also the rights to bang his own mom. Ancient Greek anime is weird as fuck. The manga is definitely better. The ancient Egyptian anime arc is much more chill. There's slightly less incest, and sphinxes are depicted more as benevolent prophet bros and less as sociopathic murderers. So with the fun for the whole family Sphinx history lesson out of the way, let's planeswalk on over to Amonkhet and meet Magic's most underrated blue commander. 6 mana may seem like a lot of upfront cost for a commander, and trust me, it is. But when you picture that Unesh is essentially what you get when you take an Urza's Incubator and staple it to a Factor Fiction, well, 6 mana doesn't seem like so much anymore. Unesh's cost reduction is particularly potent with Sphinxes with Surge or Prowl costs. You can cheat them into play for ridiculously cheap. Or in the case of creatures like Universal Automaton, it's an absolutely free Factor Fiction. Add in a dash of big boys like Sphinx of Uthun, and now your opponents are going to be Factor Fictioning the top 9 cards of your library. Once Unesh and his flying boys get off the ground, you're going to need resources that give you an unlimited hand size such as Thought Vessel, or utility pieces like Imperial Plate that translate all those cards you have into a decisive, aggressive advantage. Graveyard reshuffle effects are a must. We're going to fill up our yard in a hurry, and I personally love Recall. It's a really strong utility piece, being able to nab 1 or 2 important cards that you need right out of your graveyard. Clone effects are great here. They allow you to double up on big-time Sphinxes at a low cost, or take advantage of obnoxious pieces that your opponents already have in play. And check out this hot garbage pile. You can use Artificial Evolution to change the text on Homrid's spawning bed to read Sphinx instead of Camrid. Now, if you sacrifice a big Sphinx, you're making a ton of 1/1 Sphinx tokens. It's absolutely ridiculous. They may not be Force of Will or Pact of Negation, but cards like Foil or Misdirection are extremely obnoxious for your opponents to play around, and they're a hell of a lot more affordable. Personally, I love value engines like Guardian of Tazim or Enigma Thief. For a low cost, you're not only Factor Fictioning, you're freezing opponents' creatures for a full turn cycle, or bouncing their non-land permanents. Outside of the obvious beat people to death with a really big Unesh plan, there's over-the-top synergies like hitting a Sphinx Mindbreaker with a kicked right of replication. It might not outright win you the game, but it's janky, it's fun, and it puts you in a really good position on board. The one actual win condition is a Temsis All-Seeing. All it requires is having 6 cards with different mana costs in your hand, and then hitting a player, and whoever you hit, it doesn't matter how much of a board state they have, they're done. Play Magic the Gathering online against a bunch of random people. Today we'll be squaring off against the Queen of Cascade, Averna the Chaos Bloom, the big angry jellybean, Omnath Locus of Rage, and the Mardu Avenger himself, Gen Arcanum Weaver. Hey there guys, friendly neighborhood host Lex here. Just wanted to let you know before the gameplay begins, there are going to be 2 deck lists in the description. One is the exact list that I'm using in today's gameplay. It's the more budget-focused version, sitting around $52 at the time of this video's recording. The other is a more high-powered list with absolutely no budget restrictions. So check those out and let me know what you think. And without further ado, let the games begin.
3, 2, 1, go!
Well, I'm playing 4th in turn order and have to mulligan down to 6. This isn't a great hand, but we've got some spells to draw some cards, and with a little luck, we can get into enough mana to get Unesh onto the battlefield. We've got a pre-game Leyline of Sanctity from Gen, but otherwise, turn 1 is pretty uneventful. I top deck a Brainstorm here, so we're gonna see what the next 3 cards on top of my library look like, and hopefully I catch a break. Thought Vessel and Imperial Plate make a good pair, but I really need another land. Averna's going to start the ramp party off early with an inn to the north. Omnath and Gen, however, don't have turn 2 plays. I'm going to drop a Thought Vessel and send a little prayer out to Richard Garfield, PhD, and hope a land shows up soon. Averna's going to get a Thrasios into play. Man, fuck this card, it's such a good value engine. Omnath's gonna get a little ramp of his own going with Creepy Spirit Fingers, aka Kodama's Reach. Gen's gonna spend his third turn making a mortal enemy out of Omnath by slamming down a Nevermore. Look, if you want a quick way to make somebody want to kill you, play a Nevermore naming their commander. I'm gonna pop a Charter Course here to draw 2 more cards and see what I'm working with. Still no lands, but Misdirection and the Changeling are solid overall. Averna's gonna do what anybody with a Thrasios does, feed mana into the bastard and see what you get. Omnath's gonna be a good green mage and use a Harrow to ramp out some more, then use the mana they generate off the Harrow to propel themselves into a Hammer of Perforos. A haste enabler that produces 3/3 tokens? Yeah, seems pretty good. Again, Arcanum Weaver has officially entered the battlefield. I hope you're ready for enchantment shenanigans. Finally drew the land I needed, but I've gotta wait a full turn cycle before I can get Unesh out onto the battlefield. Averna's gonna pop another Thrasios activation and put all that extra mana to work. Omnath's gonna slam down a Rampaging Baloths, then make their land drop for turn, effectively giving them 10 power worth of hasty beastiness. Then, as retaliation for the Nevermore, they're going to swing into the Gen player, chipping him down to 29. As a defensive measure, Gen's going to cast a Light Minefield, a unique enchantment that makes attackers have to think twice about the number of creatures they swing at players with. Now that I've got my land straightened out, it's time to get Unesh on the field and get to work. And should anybody have removal for Unesh, I have a Misdirection in hand to keep him safe.
Nice.
Pile number 1 is a 2-2 split. We're going to keep the Sphinx of Uthun and an island. Averna, the Queen of Cascade, has officially entered the chat, and of course she'll be promptly followed up by a Cascade spell. Being able to play any land you find along the way while you're cascading is really solid value. It just puts you so far ahead of everybody else at the table. Omnath's gonna drop an Ogre Battle Driver onto the field, then using the Hammer of Perforos create a 3/3 Golem token that will be a 5/3 until end of turn because of the Battle Driver. Then, they'll swing all out at Gen. Light Minefield is going to vaporize the Golem token, however Gen will still take 10 damage. Gen's gonna stay on the defensive by enchanting the Rampaging Baloths with a Darksteel mutation, effectively neutering the Baloth for now. Top decking a foil gives us even more free interaction to work with, but for now I'm gonna put this Changeling into play as a 1-mana Factor Fiction. Fucking course.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Fortunately, I've got a Sphinx of Uthun in hand, so, theoretically there's not gonna be 9 islands on top of my deck. Now that's more like it. I'm gonna take the 4-1 split here, giving myself a 3rd counterspell and more fuel for the Imperial Plate. I decide to keep the pile with Sphinx of Lost Truths, then I get aggressive and swing in at Averna for 4. Averna's gonna put an Acidic Slime onto the stack, angling to take out my Imperial Plate. I can't let this happen, so I counter it with a foil. The follow-up play is yet another Bastard Thrasios activation. Omnath's gonna start things off with a Skull Clamp, one of the best value engines in the game. Kill a 1 toughness creature, draw 2 cards. Sounds pretty great. The 1 toughness Baloth is going to be sacrificed in the name of card draw, and an Evolutionary Leap is going to come onto the battlefield. With all of their value engines online, Omnath is going to continue their Kill the Gen player campaign. Gen's gonna start things up by playing an Oubliette. Now look, I don't know if this was going to be aimed at my Unesh, but I can't take that risk. I have to take it off the stack. The game plan here is simple. It's time to get busy. We're gonna make Unesh a big time beater and then use our Serum Visions to see what else we're working with on top. I'm gonna keep the Curator of Mysteries on top, then send a clear message to Averna. Kill me or be killed. I'm then going to follow up with a Sphinx of Lost Truth, who's going to dig me even deeper into my library and allow me to discard anything I don't need from my hand. And for this pile, I'm going to keep the Glyph Keeper and an island. I know I'm overcommitting to the board here, but when you have the opportunity to play out a Curator of Mysteries for 2 mana and Factor Fiction putting 3 new cards in your hand, yeah, you do it. Averna's gonna start things off by tapping down a lot of mana and getting a Maelstrom Wanderer onto the stack, and of course, the first Cascade trigger is gonna hit a Rex Sage.
I can't believe you've done this.
Maelstrom's second Cascade trigger is gonna nab an Explore. It's good, but overall we got pretty lucky with the Cascade hits here. But wait, here comes the totally fair and balanced Dockside Extortionist.
This needs to stop now. This is cancer.
The Dockside mana will be just enough to pump out a Sweet Gum Recluse, which will set off a cascade trigger for a Balaged Recovery, which will put Scavenging Ooze back in Averna's hand. However, Averna's gonna make a critical error here, throwing their giant army of creatures directly into a Light Mine field, resulting in them wiping their own board. I'll throw a Changeling in the way as a chump blocker for Maelstrom Wanderer and avoid any big damage. Omnath's gonna start off with a Fierce Empath, a solid creature tutor. They're then gonna Skull Clamp it to draw some extra cards. Omnath's then gonna continue on the Kill Gen plan. With the aid of Light Mine Field, Gen is going to be able to chump block in front of Ogre Battle Driver, killing Ogre Battle Driver in the process. For Gen's turn, they're just gonna lay down a Soul Ring and use that to power them into a Black Market, which is a solid all-around card, but doesn't do much on the current board state. Back to my turn, I'm going to use an Impulse to see what I'm working with on top. I find a Curse of the Swine. I think it's time to turn some problems into pigs. In response to my Curse of the Swine shenanigans, Omnath is going to sacrifice their Beast token to draw 2 cards and get an Evolutionary Leap trigger. If you have the opportunity to take a player off the board, you do so. Farewell, Gen. GG.
Fatality.
Averna's gonna replay Acidic Slime, turning our Thought Vessel into Scrap Metal. They're going to follow that up with yet another Cascade spell, Violent Outburst, which will nab them a Coiling Oracle. I'm then going to be very violently assaulted by a vicious mob of pigs. Omnath's gonna start things off by dropping a Blasphemous Act on us. Ugh. F's in the chat, please. Now that the pathway is clear, a Rubble Hulk is going to be deployed to the battlefield.
No! God, please, no! No!
Look, it sucks. I'm gonna take a lot of damage here, but things don't always go according to plan. You have to adapt in order to survive. We've taken some hits and our recent top decks aren't great, but look, we're gonna redeploy Unesh because if I'm gonna die with my main man on the field.
Guess who's back?
For this pile, we end up with a 3-to-1 split. Now, I'm going to keep the Reality Shift and the Counterspell here for sure. It's coming down to crunch time, and we need big plays fast. We're going to see Averna hit the field yet again, and she'll be quickly followed up by a Volcanic Torrent, which by the time the Cascade triggers are done resolving, it will deal 4 damage to every creature on the board, unfortunately, killing Unesh. Omnath's gonna start things off with a From the Ashes, which, fortunately for us, we only play 1 non-basic land in the whole list, so doesn't really do anything. Expedition Map is going to be played and then used to fetch out a basic mountain. Rubble Hulk is then going to be suited up with a Skull Clamp, making him pretty damn big. I'm gonna eat this damage and hope that I top deck my ass off. Better fucking lucky than good. A Temsis All-Seeing has entered the chat. It's time to deploy Metal Gear.
Yeah, boy.
Look, it's a solid top deck and we can take somebody out with him, but we've got to keep him alive long enough to do that first. At my end step, Averna's going to use Natural Reclamation to take out Skull Clamp. They coincidentally cascade into an Equilibrium. Now this card is a problem. It's going to keep us off a Temsis, so we have to counter it. Speaking of giant green fatties, Averna is going to deploy an Ashaya to the field. Ugh, I don't want to deal with this right now. It's taken all game long, but finally, Omnath, the jelly bean of doom, destruction, and death, is finally hitting the battlefield. We're about to witness a butt-ton of landfall triggers, which is going to turn the board into an elemental playground. Look, it's not looking good right now for our Sphinx heroes. Once Omnath is done deploying his ground troops, he's going to swing all in at the annoying blue player. Fortunately enough for me, I have a Reality Shift to deal with the Rubble Hulk, but I'm still going to take a lot of damage here. Well, Omnath, it's been a good game, and I commend you for a game very well played. Cheers, friend.
Fatality.
That's 2 down, but this game is far from over. We're gonna make a splashy play here with a Rite of Replication kicked, targeting the Elvish Visionary. It'll draw some cards, but mostly it just gives us chump blockers at this point. We're gonna pass the turn over and hope that we've done enough to survive. I'm not too worried about Conjurer's Closet here. I'm more worried that my chump blockers are enough to sustain me for just a little longer. And with Conjurer's Closet triggering one last time, drawing them a card off of Elvish Visionary re-entering, Averna decides to scoop it up. Now look, it was janky, it was terrible at times, there were misplays, but at the end of the day, the Sphinxes got there. I'd like to give a shout out to my opponents. Thank you so much for playing with me. And I'd like to give a shout out to you, the viewer. Thank you so much for watching. And that's all for now. See you next time.